Assalamu alaikum, family. You're tuned into the Sajda Wendy Muhammad YouTube channel, and I'm your host, Sajda Wendy Muhammad. We're going to be having a power-packed discussion this morning. This is on the back of our masterclass that we did last week on the Jay-Z Target deal. And the idea is to get us to, when we see these things pop up in pop culture, to think about them a little bit differently and to be okay with having an independent opinion about stuff. See, a lot of us go along to get along because a person's popular, because they got money, because whatever. But today we're going to just dive into this Oprah Winfrey comment that she made about Whitney Houston. And I want to tie that into the importance of preservation and how all too often we are unpersoned in history. And it is our responsibility to make sure that that does not continue to happen to our people. So be a friend, tell a friend, and we'll be back after a few short commercials and a beautiful prayer.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided thee right, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, y'all. Peace be unto you. Welcome to the show. Listen, this may not be a long show, but I think it's going to be a strong show. Y'all remember after 9/11 how in the airport, there was this slogan that said, if you see something, say something. And the idea was to get people to report if they saw anything unusual so that the powers that be could jump out there and deal with it and catch it before it turned into something major. We are trained like that in the Nation of Islam to report all slackness, weakness, and wrongdoings. It's part of our general orders that we're trained. But I don't know how many of us think about that when it comes to social things. You know how shocked a lot of us are when we hear about all the Black people that invented all of this different stuff, and we hear people like comedian Godfrey, shout out to Godfrey, who does these really cool rundowns of Black inventors and Black accomplishments, and we're like, whoa, I didn't know about all of this. A lot of that is because there has been a concerted effort to unperson us when it comes to history, okay? And I'm going to end the show with talking about why it's important for you and I to take responsibility to preserve history. For far too long, we've allowed other people to tell our stories. We've allowed a cloud that may be over an artist or a hero of ours to be the story and not necessarily what they've accomplished. And I'm sorry, white people don't do that when it comes to their history. Most of us are just now finding out that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson had slaves, because you didn't hear about that. You heard about the Declaration of Independence and his ethics and not telling a lie and all of these attributes. And it's because they are telling their story. But what we've done is we've allowed our story and our culture to be monetized and for someone else to own that story and to monetize it. And now what's happening is because they want to remove our stories from history, they're saying there's no more money for you all to preserve your history. But guess what? We got to start telling our own stories. So I don't know how many of you all have been paying attention, maybe if you've been under a rock, that Oprah Winfrey made a statement about Whitney Houston that got those of us that are not only Whitney Houston fans, but those of us who consider Whitney Houston a big sister in an uproar. And it's a problem because somebody like Oprah Winfrey, with her level of influence, the reach, the breadth, and the depth of her influence, to make a disparaging comment, if you will, about somebody like Whitney Houston who trusted her. And I don't know the real timing of it. I don't know if she made this in the wake of the death of Clive Davis, the music mogul. I don't know when if it just came out at that time. But the question became, what are you saying this, Oprah? And why now? Let me grab it so I can play it, because some of y'all might have missed it. And we're going to play a couple of things this morning, but let's just play this clip of Oprah saying what she said about our sister. I just want to make sure you guys can see it. All right. It's just a quick thing on YouTube. I'm just going to play it so you can hear it. Here we go.
First interview I did with her when we gone behind stage, and I asked her about her attention. She was clean, But the day she came to my show then to perform in front of the audience, she was not. And she fell off of the stage. And so even though the audience was there and the audience had cameras, I begged them not to put those pictures out because it would ruin her life, and they did not. First interview I did with her when we'd gone behind stage and I asked her about her attention, she was clean. But the day she came to my show then to perform in front of the audience, she was not. And she fell off of the stage. And so even though the audience was there and the audience had cameras, I begged them not to put those pictures out because it would.
Why? Why now? If you thought to protect the sister back then, why not continue to protect her in death? Why say something? What's the point? I'm going to play one more thing for you. I was watching a couple of podcasts and I saw the Breakfast Club statement on it. I saw this podcast statement on it. And I want to play this statement or this conversation, if you will, from Young Turk on this podcast that he was on, just so you can get a gist of the conversation before I go into why I am saying that if you see something, say something, and that it's time for us to start telling our own stories and to not allow this type of thing to be okay in our community. There's far too many of us being unpersoned. I was talking to somebody the other day and we were having a deep conversation about Madam C.J. Walker and Annie Malone. And they were like, man, I didn't even know anything. I didn't know all this about Annie Malone and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I know Madam C.J. Walker. I said, yeah, because her family's done a better job at telling her story and keeping her legacy alive. In the case of Annie Malone, she didn't have any children. She left her estate, if you will, to her nieces and nephews. And I don't know what their personal circumstances are, so I'm not body slamming them. But they did not, when you compare them to the Madam C.J. Walker estate, do a good job in saying who she was and what she accomplished. And I just think it's a shame because I think about myself. I don't have children. So I hope that my legacy will continue to live on with the things that I've worked on, the things that I've accomplished, and that some hating sister don't come along and talk about the negative stuff about me, especially if there's a powerful arm behind her. I'm gonna get into this afterwards. Let's listen to this conversation. I'm going deep into what I was going to say, because I'm going to give us a list of why it's important for us to own and monetize our own culture. I'm going to give us a little bit of a perspective on helping us to understand that oftentimes what happens, and a lot of you don't know this, when you strive, okay, and you end up finding yourself at a certain income level or a certain influence level, you start to pick up big enemies. And oftentimes what those big enemies will do is they will try to suck you up into their narrative. So maybe they give you a contract and they say, okay, Sajda, now we done gave you this money. You got to kind of follow along what we want you to follow along with. Otherwise, we're going to snatch it. And then this just keeps compiling with people. This is why you see a lot of people. We talked last week about the Jay-Z Target deal. We're talking this week about Oprah. This is why a lot of times you see these people do things that appear to be inhumane. And they probably are very offended by us using these terms and saying these things about them, because they probably don't consider themselves to be that. But once you begin to lose touch with your community, with reality, and don't understand that in many cases you are the hope of a people who over 400 years have been unpersoned, erased, not seen as human. You have a larger responsibility if you have a certain level of influence. All right, let's just let's check out this discussion.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of getting selves together, a clip from Oprah Winfrey just was released talking about Whitney Houston being on her show, and she was talking about Whitney's, battle with addiction that she had during the time when she was interviewing her. What were your thoughts on what Oprah had to say?
Man, I love Oprah, man, and I love her money even more. For real.
Yeah.
I think Oprah was out of line, out of pocket, bro. And when she said that, I say, damn, Oprah it must be her turn.
Yeah.
And as a black person, every time something come out of somebody's mouth and they say things to take another black person down who's a legacy artist,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I feel like your turn have came where you have to do something in the public that's either humiliating or humiliating somebody else that got status, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what Oprah did, because if that happened on your show and you told the people on your show, don't put that footage out, mm-hmm. that means you cared enough about Whitney Houston when she was alive. Yeah. Why wait till she died years later and bring that shit up? If you told other people don't put it out, what was the reason for you telling other people don't put it out then? Why is you doing it now all of a sudden when we didn't know nothing about it? Yeah. So you have to be thinking about yourself, you know what I'm saying? Back then and now. And she out of pocket, man, because this woman, everybody love Whitney Houston, and we all know what she battled with, you know what I'm saying? She did it right in our face. But to be reminded of that when we got over her self doing this stuff to herself, because she didn't hurt nobody else, you know what I'm saying? But the way how she put it, she all the way out of pocket, man. And I hope Oprah Winfrey take accountability for that, bro, because she always be one of the ones to want everybody else to take accountability. I remember one time she was hard on Jay-Z about his lyrics and stuff. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Well, you just spit some lyrics that fucked the world up.
And speaking of Whitney Houston, Clive Davis, one of the label heads that...
I'm going to cut it off right there because the Clive Davis situation is a whole nother conversation when we start talking about the trail of death connected to his artists. From the Phyllis Hymans to the bullying that Kelly Clarkson talks about, that's a whole nother thing. And I can think of a list of people, but we're not getting into that today. What we're talking about is our responsibility in storytelling. And what I want us to get out of this is, let's have discernment when we are modeling people that have achieved a certain level of success. Okay. Obviously, with our sister Whitney Houston, the discernment is say no to drugs. Okay. But with somebody like Oprah, the discernment is let's have a heart and let's not slander another sister, another Black woman. And I don't know what it is with Oprah and even Gayle after somebody dies. I remember after Kobe Bryant died, Gayle started questioning Lisa Leslie about some things. Here we go after Michael Jackson passes. Here Oprah is with this whole thing. But you got friends, Oprah, that we still question why you even friends with them. We question the Harvey Weinstein. We're questioning the Jeffrey Epstein. We're questioning that. But in the Black community, we still give you a pass because we love you. So it don't make sense to do this to Whitney. So here are several reasons why owning and preserving our history is essential. Okay. This is why it's so important that we begin to own our stories, stop allowing ourselves to be unpersoned. I don't care if they cut the funding off. I don't care if there's no more nonprofit money and you can't figure out how to do it. Tell the story through art and culture. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told me that, and I've heard him say this also publicly, that when we tell our story using arts and culture, it can be way more powerful than a pastor or somebody else telling the story. If you got a platform, if you're an artist, tell the story of the people who are great in our community. But let's protect one another and guard against our legacies being torn down, even if it is potentially being torn down by another Black person. If you agreed to protect somebody, you should have took this to the grave, Oprah. I'm sorry. I just think you should have taken it to the grave. You know, we got such this old school weirdness when it comes to history. Either we're always lying about history, we don't tell our history, and then those that come behind us don't have the benefit of history, which is the greatest teacher. Let's talk about, has anybody dissected the vocal technique and the breathing capacity of a Whitney Houston to do what she does? How does that help young singers that are out here? How does she navigate her life? We could go, okay. I heard somebody saying, you know, y'all continue to uplift these people that destroy themselves with drugs. That's not necessarily true. Because if you will slam Whitney Houston, you'll slam a regular person who has accomplished stuff. See, what has happened in the business world, for example, those of us that are out here making accomplishments, that have done amazing things, we're not necessarily getting the credit. So you got the powers that be that say, okay, a pop culture icon is going to be entrepreneur of the year or Forbes, blah, blah, blah. They're going to be the ones that are going to get the deals. They're going to, all of this stuff. So therefore, we then turn around and value what they value. So if they don't value the everyday business person that gets up every day, puts programs together, makes a difference in our lives, that influences us, employs us, if they don't value it, then we go, okay, well, we don't value it. So we have to stop. Part of the separation that I talk about in this book that I wrote is also a mental and spiritual separation where we have to stop thinking like a colonizer. Whatever they think is important, we don't have to follow behind it and say, okay, that's what's important too. Our history is important. Our children need to know. Hell, we need to know. Do you know how much I've learned from being a historian now, a preservationist, that I've learned from history? Like, here's a pattern. I get this. See, these colonizers, I don't know if y'all realize this, they do not create. They just kill, steal, and destroy. And for all these years, we've been owned. We've been unpersoned. We haven't been real people. Just whatever they create, we're going to take it. We're going to extract it from them. We're going to put it in a machine and see if we can figure out how to recreate it. And maybe we don't even need them. We definitely don't need their history. Let me just give these before we go. Here are several reasons why owning and preserving Black history is essential. Number one, history establishes personhood. You hear me talking about how we have not been looked at on a human level. We have been unpersoned. Our history is unpersoned. They extract what they want to keep from our history, throw away the rest. And the part that they extract is the part that supports the narrative that they tell. But when we tell our history, we are establishing personhood for those individuals. When you see us with these house museums and we're saying, oh, this is Muddy Water House and this is Elijah Muhammad House, it doesn't necessarily even have to mean that it has to be a business. It just needs to be awareness. Because in Chicago and a lot of these major cities, we go past and we say, oh, that's Irv Gotti's house. Oh, that's the Rosenwald house, or that's the Goodyear mansion. Why do we do that? We do that because of our respect for history. But these people are such haters when it comes to our history. If we say out of our mouth, oh, this is the Emmett Till house, or this is where Chaka Khan grew up, all of a sudden they want to decrease the value. All of a sudden it doesn't matter anymore. It does matter. Our history matters, and history established personhood. For most of American history, Black people have been treated in the law as property, as opposed to full persons. When we talk about the Constitution saying we were 3/5 of a human, in a lot of ways, that's still true. We have some progresses and things that we can do, but when it comes to our personhood, can we defend our life? Can we take our lives into our own hands? When you look at the actions of society, it says no. Can we protect ourselves? If somebody come in our house and try to hurt us and we unalive them, all of a sudden we can't stand our ground. Stand our ground is not for us. All of a sudden we want to tell our history. We want to say, hey, this person accomplished great things for our community. Then all of a sudden, no, you can't do that. That's because in many cases, we are still not people. We still don't have what they call personhood. So when someone's life is not recorded, when you ignore their accomplishments, when you ignore their voice and remove it from history, even if their voice was pivotal to key things in history, then you can act as if their contributions never existed. This is why a Black woman not honoring her word to protect something about another Black woman who trusted her is so egregious. So historical preservation of our history restores what was denied. And it helps to recognize our human dignity. Our human dignity deserves to be recognized. When I think about my family, I think about my grandmother and her personhood, her humanity. What did she feel like getting on that train in 1945 in Louisiana and coming up north? What was she thinking? What was she feeling on the train? See, if we had documented that and chronicled that, then we would know that. If she had shared that with us, then we would know those things. We could feel it. We can go deeper into our connection with our ancestors. What was our parents thinking about? What was our father thinking? If he decided to walk away, what was the thought? What was the feeling? Here's number 2. Stories often determine who receives credit. At the opening of the show, I was talking about Annie Malone and Madam C.J. Walker and how Annie Malone's story was erased out of history until recently. You see, because her innovation and her story determines who gets credit for the things that she placed out into society that people made money on, that she doesn't get credit for, nor does her estate get credit for it. This is why it's difficult for us to monetize. This is why I was having this conversation again the other day with somebody, and I said, you know, when you look at executives, and I use myself as an example, when you look at those of us as executives of concepts, ideas, of businesses, we are only as successful as the cash flow through our business and our service. But a lot of times we deserve credit far beyond the cash flow. We deserve to be able to monetize the wealth associated with the innovation that we introduced into the world. But because there is a habitual habit of doing things like this, reducing Whitney Houston to a fall by a great influencer, it's difficult for us to monetize our innovations. See, because the stories determine who received the credit. And if people cut the story out, then the colonizer can say, oh, no, I created that. This is my culture. This is my history. If the innovators disappear from the historical record, then their intellectual legacy can disappear. The economic opportunities can be denied, and their cultural influence can be dissolved. See, throughout history, many Black inventors, entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, community builders have received very little recognition, while other people profited from or became more closely associated with their work. And it starts by little things like this. You just keep putting negative stuff out about an icon, about a person. Keep saying bad stuff. Keep putting negative things out. Then that goes out, especially in today's world where we got algorithms. So now the algorithm is picking up what you as an influencer said about that Black person. And then that begins to overshadow their accomplishments, their talent, who they are, and what they mean to those who didn't necessarily experience them. So even when there is a debate over individual cases, the broader pattern is oftentimes well documented. We get excluded from institutions, and we don't tell the story. See, number 3, our history shapes our identity. See, there's a way to tell Whitney Houston's story that talks about a sojourn into an industry that can help shape the identity of those coming behind her. People become what they believe is possible. When children learn our stories, when they learn about our oppression, they may internalize limitation if that's all you teach them. But teach them the courage. I talked about my grandmother. I remember when I was getting ready to move to Washington, D.C. and take a project, and I was very nervous. And I remember calling my cousin in Louisiana, and she and I were just talking, and she told me how brave, it really makes me emotional because she touched my soul. She said, your grandmother was so brave. Her level of courage, she had to be scared. She left the town where my cousin at the time was living. She said she left here where so many people were afraid to leave, and she got on a train and went somewhere where she did not know anybody. And I started thinking about that courage, and I started thinking about the strength and what it took and what she may have been thinking. And do you know that empowered me to not only make that move, but to go there and to go there and make history. See, when we learn stories of our ancestors, of invention, of institution building, scholarship, military service, entrepreneurship, diplomacy, architecture, medicine, artistic excellence, then we inherit a much larger vision, but more importantly, we inherit the vibration. We inherit the vibration. And history expands our imagination. I remember a friend of mine telling me that when he went away to school, one of his brothers said, "Man, you went all the way to school by yourself." When I think about how many times I was afraid in school, I remember facing, adversary. When I got to Iowa State, a lot of people were we were in this thing called the Summer Enrichment Program, and a lot of the Black students that were there, they were kind of in with the whole Black Student Union, but I wasn't in with them. So I didn't get a job. I didn't get a lot of the favors that they got. So my first job, I had 2 jobs. I was doing some tutoring, which I just kind of came up with and said, I can do it. I put my resume together and I went over to a particular organization. And I said, "Hey, I can tutor." And they hired me to be a tutor, but that wasn't a lot of hours. So I ended up getting a job at Burger King. And my little car had broke down. So I had to walk from Burger King. I forget the name of that street in Ames or whatever the main street is, all the way down to the dorms. And we got off at 10 o'clock at night. So it would be dark. And I remember taking a box cutter and putting it up the sleeve of my winter coat, because these white boys would be off the chain, throwing eggs at people and doing all kind of crazy stuff. And I just said, I'm going to get through this. That's a story for somebody who's going through that right now. Number 4, communities without archives become vulnerable. If records, photographs, oral history, buildings, real estate, family papers, newspapers, artifacts are not reserved, then later generations cannot defend the truth. When our communities do not have archives, we run the risk of historical erasure, revisionism, where the history is revised and somebody can just pretend like we didn't exist. There's cultural appropriation, where somebody else can come along and say, no, I invented the moonwalk. False narratives, because there's no truth. Exploitation of our intellectual property is what I just talked about. I talked about being a person that has made history. But as a Black person, we are oftentimes reduced to some type of administrative thing. We have to go sit among our people and deal with jealousy and haterism. A lot of other communities don't have to do that, because the intellectual property and the intellectual asset is uplifted. And so I choose to uplift that myself. We got to tell our own history. I'm not going to wait for you to see value in who I am, because I believe that the God within me, that piece of God that's in me, knew exactly what it was doing when it deposited itself in this body and made a decision to look like this. I'm going to honor that. And I'm not going to let somebody else outside of this God that's within me demean me or make me feel a certain kind of way. Yeah, we all going to struggle. Sometimes people ask me how I'm doing. I say, I'm managing my divinity. We're managing it, trying to respect this body, trying to take care of what we've been given responsibility over. Don't let people write us out of history and say these kind of things. If you see something, say something. If we don't have archives, we will lose legal and even property claims. Preservation is evidence. Number 5, why is history important? Because storytelling creates continuity. Every civilization survives because each generation transfers knowledge to the next. And they've done a nasty thing in our community. We used to be about storytelling. Somewhere with the baby boomer generation, they refocused them. They said, oh, hey, we got this whole industrial revolution happening. We want y'all to go downtown and get a job. And we're going to give you all these freedoms. We're going to do all of this stuff. So you ain't even got to think about your children. And so those of us that are in Gen Z, we had that key around our neck. We went home by ourselves. We were at home at school, after school by ourselves. We were a lot more independent than the generation before us because our parents were working. I'm not saying they definitely, obviously they loved us because they went to work, and that work and providing was an act of love. So I'm not saying that at all, but there's also the other side of that, in that in a lot of ways, there was a disconnect between Gen Z and the baby boomers, because that's why a lot of baby boomers are better with their grandchildren than those of us in Gen Z. And I'm using these terms just so y'all get the age bracket. But reason why I'm saying that is because that being at home all the time, the nurturing, the coddling didn't happen. It was just, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, I'm gonna whip your ass and you're gonna get somewhere and sit down, put that key around your neck, don't tell my business, close the door. It was more transactional and instructional because the society had been developed where they had to go to work. So they didn't always have time to sit down and have dinner with us every day. During that generation is where we lost the tradition of Sunday dinners and evening dinners and people being connected. That's a whole nother story. But the storytelling creates continuity. Every civilization survives because each generation transfers knowledge to the next. When that chain is broken, communities must continually rediscover what previous generations already knew. So what's setting us back as a people, we're constantly rediscovering what our parents and grandparents already knew. And then guess what's happening? Now we got pop culture magnifying negativity from the aunties and the people that came before us, magnifying that negativity, telling those of us afterwards that those people don't matter. You ain't got to listen. They old, they not hip, they not popular. But what happens when you age out of their grace? See, storytelling allows wisdom. It's not just information, but it is the wisdom to survive. And if we can get access to information and we can understand what happened to Phyllis Hyman and Miles Davis and Sam Cooke and Whitney Houston, then when y'all out here trying to get your contract for your artistry, then you know what to avoid. I had a music business a while ago, and this is way back when we were still pressing CDs. I had a CD presser in my office. I could press up like 10 or 20 at a time for demos for my artists. But here's the thing. I've always been a lover of history, and I knew my history. But most of the artists that I work with did not know history. And so when I said, hey, there's this new thing called digital distribution. Go back, and I was one of the first persons to introduce digital distribution to artists, specifically here in Chicago. That way you can get your music out here. You can start making money. You can get your name out here. I even was teaching people how to be influencers. I was saying to artists, hey, let's go up north. Let's go to the improv so you can learn how to act and speak and put you in front of people so that you can start to monetize your full authentic self. And they wasn't trying to hear it. And I get it. It's a certain thing called timing. In a lot of ways, I was ahead of my time. But the concept of being an influencer and using digital distribution and using the internet, as soon as I saw the internet, MySpace, I said, oh no, this what needs to happen. But people weren't ready, because once pop culture puts something out there and makes you think, okay, I'm waiting to be discovered. And you got a lot of people today that look at business people like myself and don't consider us to be successful. Why? Because some big benevolent white person has not stood up and out of their mouth said, I love Sajda Wendy Muhammad. Y'all, that can't be the litmus test. We got to have our individual discernment. We want to be rugged individuals. For everything else, we got to be independent thinkers. So storytelling, it will create the continuity. Here's number 6. Institutions remember what individuals cannot. Okay. So one of the reasons museums, archives, libraries, historic homes, universities, churches, mosques, newspapers, and cultural organizations matter is because they preserve collective memory long after the eyewitnesses are gone. A community that builds institutions is also building memory. This is one reason historically significant Black homes, schools, businesses, properties, newspapers, cultural sites, they deserve preservation, because they're not just old buildings. They are repositories of evidence that Black achievement existed. They are repositories of evidence that Black people flourished, that Black people had intellectual capital that mattered. And they have helped to shape the United States of America, because this entire capitalistic society has been built on the back of Black people. And I know that's a hard concept for a lot of y'all to get, but it started with us being brought here as slaves, and everything along the way, our bodies have been used to advance this country forward. When Americans' economy was falling down and they said, oh, you know what? Let's bring Black folks up from the South. They ain't got a sharecrop no more. Let's give them an hourly wage and let them work in the factories. We saved the economy. And there are so many other ways in which we've done that. They were able to monetize and create massive amounts of wealth off of our culture, whether it was hip hop culture, rock and roll became the new product of the blues, things that we were just doing to console ourselves became massive industries. Here's the last thing. History influences the future. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that history is best at rewarding its student. Public policy, philanthropy, education, tourism, investments, economic development allow for historical recognition. When history is omitted or cut out, communities may also lose opportunities for economic development. Remembering history is therefore not just for the sake of remembering it, it's for the future. There's an African proverb that says, until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Let me say that again, because I don't think y'all heard that. Y'all may have heard me say that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that history is best at rewarding its student. But I don't think y'all heard this African proverb. Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. So in our community, preserving our history is not just nostalgia. We can't be influencers out here negatively impacting our history. We have to do better, Sister Oprah. And that just wasn't necessary. And you might be saying, who am I to say that to you? You might be saying, I'm this big billionaire. Who am I? You know who I am? I am a sister. I'm a Black woman. I'm a global thought leader that can, in fact, about it, help you and your organization and help you do a better job at even preserving your legacy. Because if you're not careful, and it's not a threat or anything, you're not careful, these people that have developed the mindset that got you thinking it's okay to tell a secret like that may very well write you out of history. You don't know what they're going to say when you're gone. There's good that you've done in the country, maybe even in the community in the past. I know you did some good in Chicago when you first got here. Don't nobody talk about Don't nobody talk about how many people you helped here in Chicago. Don't nobody talk about the work that you did, the things you gave away, your philanthropy with the community. Don't nobody talk about that. You don't even hear those families standing up saying, hey, Oprah did this or that for me. Why? Because we have been reduced to the point where we are not people. We are only what somebody say we are. Don't join that party. Your legacy is too big. You're too big of an icon. You're too big of a person who has accomplished much in our community to allow yourself to be reduced to these things. And then you may say, well, maybe you don't care. I don't know. Maybe you don't. But my point is saying this: it's not too late. It's not too late to tell the true story, not the story written by white people who want to make it look like you are something that you're not. I'm talking about the story of a real Black girl, a fat Black girl with a jerry curl who made it in this world. Don't do that. Don't do Whitney like that. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary. All right, family. With that, tune in tomorrow. We did our masterclass last week on the Jay-Z Target deal. If you have any questions about that, the idea behind that was to get us to see the business behind what pop culture was saying to us. There's so much I want to say. So if you don't have your commemorative Elijah coin, I'm going to encourage you to go out there and get your commemorative Elijah coin. If you have not registered your coin, I'm going to encourage you to go out there and register your coin. We have an event coming up that so far a lot of y'all have registered for, and we're excited about it. And we just planned another event for later in the summer, all around art and music and culture. We are doing some amazing things around developing people who are builders, helping our young people understand the power of becoming builders, not just getting a job. That's important to us. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself because it's not mine to, that part is not mine to announce. But what I can announce is that I'm going to be hosting what I'm calling Builders Day later on this summer. I have the date. You'll hear more about it. Builders Day is where we're going to bring in a lot of different important people that are going to come and talk to our youth ages 23 to 35, right in that age where you just graduated, you got your first job. We don't want you to settle in. We want you to come and learn how to be a builder, how to rebuild these wasted cities, begin to build a network of people. So we have that coming up. We've been planning it. We have a musical tribute to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's a Mahalia Jackson event performed by none other than the great jazz person of the year in Chicago, Tammy McCann. You listen, you just need to get in our network. Register your coins so you can start getting the emails. You can pay attention because this stuff fills up quick. We're going to be doing some music, art, some conscious Islamic rooted music a little bit later this summer. The Builders Day. There's a lot. Okay. And I got a webinar coming up that I'm going to work on. I know it's the summertime, but we got to work on the webinar stuff. And I am working on building our meditation app for entrepreneurs. Something that I've been doing since I was a very, very, very little girl is meditating. I didn't know that's what it was called. I didn't find out it was meditating until probably college. But it has been one of the greatest tools of my life, and I want to share it. And so, look, you got to follow us on social media. You got to join the mailing list. Go to the websites, get on there, join the mailing list so you can start getting these emails and being up on what's going on and what's happening over here in this world. Okay, everything ain't for everybody. So we have this new thing where I talk about we have to learn to curate everything. Curate your customers, curate your students, curate your friends. Curation is key because we have to focus on building a community that serves the purpose. This is not about Russian roulette. Let me just throw a bunch of stuff up against the wall and see who shows up and see who comes. Anyway, we'll see you all tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Central Time, right here on the Sajda Wendy Muhammad YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you tell a friend. Okay, make some comments so that the algorithm will recognize us. But if nothing else, just share the story. And I'm so grateful for how much you all share. It's getting to the point now where I don't even go anywhere where somebody doesn't say, hey, I watched the show, or I enjoyed this show, or they liked it, or something. I'm grateful. So grateful. All right, family. Love you all very much. Sending you nothing but blessings, nothing but good energy. I wish each and every one of you more goodness than you've ever experienced or imagined. And if you, and this is the first time I'm saying this just came to me. If you want to feel better, you want somebody that can encourage you, help you to think in a way that you might be afraid of thinking, push you to that next level, then I would say book a coaching session with me. Go to SajdaWendyMuhammad.com and book you a session, because I'm going to do everything I can to pour into you so that at the end of those sessions, you can say, I feel empowered. I feel like a better person. That is one of my goals. Let me tell you a little thing, a little hack. Start programming your subconscious mind right now. Stop doing negative stuff in the dark and being one way in the dark and then another way in the public. Find a way to find your personality and reprogram it, because guess what's going to happen? If you get old and you get dementia, then all that stuff that's back there, that crud that you haven't cleaned up, that's what's going to be coming out during that time. So let's start working now. Let's reprogram our mind. Let's move ourselves to the next level. I want my legacy to be one where people say, man, Sasaja helped me to become a millionaire. Sasaja really encouraged me. I was really down. She lifted me up. She taught me how much God loved me. And I've been working on that legacy now for 30 years. And there are people that now can actually say that. And I'm so grateful. I am so grateful. So, okay, family, I didn't mean to add that at the end. I actually was about to get out of here. Okay. May Allah bless each and every one of you. I got one commercial. If you don't have a copy of the book, go to Amazon, get a copy of the book, Art and Science of Business. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And I'll play you a little video that tells you a little bit about my services and who I am, just so you can go to Saja Wendy Muhammad and book your coaching session. You will not be disappointed. I am somebody who over the past 30 years have been working on my legacy of uplifting people, helping people find solutions to problems in their lives, and turning them around from a direction that they were going that may not have been good for them. Even when people have gotten into crisis, I am so honored and so grateful to have been among those called to be able to sit down and say, okay, this is what we can do. And I'm not talking about being an ambulance chaser and just jumping out there. I'm talking about curating environments where people can say, I've turned my life around as a result of working with this person. And I'm very serious about it. I've dedicated my life to it. And I think I got some traction going. All right, family. I love you all very much. Peace and blessings.